Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show here on AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. It's a joy to be with you. Had a wonderful conversation as we talked about public housing and Project 2025. Will it survive? I'm going to continue that conversation as we continue to move forward at this time. But now let's talk about black men and Trump. Black men and Trump. It seems that his popularity amongst black men is growing. Why is that? It's not a figment of my imagination. The data is showing that, or the data are showing that. The different metrics that are showing us that he's resonating in the black male culture. Why is that? But he's resonating, to be fair, in the culture. But let's just look at black men for now. Let's look at black men for now. The Washington Examiner, which is, to be fair, a conservative newspaper, but it's a credible newspaper nonetheless. President Donald Trump, they write, has Democrats on the ropes with his surging support from African Americans, prompting a poll to declare that, quote, black men love Trump. In a new Signal survey shared with Secrets, President Trump has a shocking, they said, 42% approval rating from black men, a massive edge over any past Republican president. And they really should say, parenthetically, I'm saying, in recent memory. Brock McCleary, a vice president of polling at Signal, said, quote, 40% of black men approving of Trump's job so far is no small thing. Unlike Democrats' approach previously, this isn't about placation or offering new attractive policies with no follow-through. His popularity and approval surges because he does the things he says he'll do. And that's a breath of fresh air for everyone. So what do you think about that, everybody? I want you to tune in. Hey, Bernadette, how you doing, sweetie? Like and share, like and share. Please meet me over at Blue Sky, santitajackson.bsky.social, and at X at SantitaJ, and the Santita Jackson and Friends Facebook page. Everybody, that's the only page where I can get friends. I have a limit on Santita Jackson, so just push that out the door. Please go to the Santita Jackson and Friends page and meet us over on YouTube at the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. I've got a tremendous panel with us today. Of course, Pastor Marshall Hatch, Reverend Dr. Marshall Hatch, brilliant theologian, professor, and senior pastor of the New Mount Pilgrim Missionary Baptist Church. When you're in Chicago, I wish you would go by and see it. They have the largest stained glass representations of black martyrs from the freedom struggle in the United States, of any place in the world. They're absolutely magnificent, and it's a magnificent cathedral, and they're doing brilliant work at the Ma'afa Redemption Project. Of course, Reverend Dr. I'm going to give you all those handles. Attorney Darrell Jones, of course, he and Attorney Barbara Arnline host their show on WOL in Washington, D.C., and of course, he's the chair of the Transformative Justice Coalition. He and Barbara Arwine are our foremost advocates for the vote in the United States today, protecting Black people's voting rights. Brilliant theologian, Reverend Dr. Roger Harris. He's doing so much great work in Chicago, but of course, he has a national and an international ministry. And we're excited that you're with us today. And he's also a therapist. Yes. And so watch what you say, everybody. Jeffrey, be on your best behavior. That's right. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. Indeed, former committeeman for the Calumet Township here in Illinois. And he's a Republican. I believe you're the first Black Republican in that space, and congratulations to you. We do need representation everywhere. Jeffrey, welcome to the show. And
Thank you.
All right. I'm so glad you all are here. Well, you know what, Jeffrey, let me start with you.
Why? Because I got the shortest resume?
Yeah. Well, no, it's not short. I just had to abbreviate it.
No, I'm just joking.
Well, no, I want to give you the space because I think that, one of the things that I think is very, very important, because many people have misunderstood Reverend Jackson's work. Reverend Jackson did not run for president to expand the Democratic Party. He ran to expand democracy and to protect the republic. Many of us can't remember this now, Jeffrey, but Democrats took us for granted and Republicans wrote us off. That was what we were saying going into the campaign in 1983. And he wanted to break that up. And he did. So you had young Black Republicans for Jesse Jackson. Chief among them, the head of that part of the campaign was none other than Armstrong Williams. You had George Haley. You had a lot of Lincoln Republicans. That's what they used to call them, which is the household really that my mother came out of, right? So being Republican is really not new to the African American experience. I think everyone could agree with that. And the good thing about having principled people in all of these parties is that we can have advocates in all of these spaces. But so having established that, Jeffrey Van Coleman, welcome to the show. I'm so glad that you're here. But now that you're here, you're home, your family. So let's get to it. Talk to us about what about President Trump, if you believe that is so, is resonating with Black men. I mean, how are Black men identifying with him?
I really don't think that is. I think that the growth in our political direction started before Trump. I've been working with the inner city. I started a barbershop tour back in '99 and '03. I started bringing liberals and Tea Partiers and right wingers to inner city barbershops just to have impromptu Q&A. Because a lot of times our communications break down. We don't think we have anything in common. This person is, not hearing negative things about this party. So I thought it would be important to bring it to the forefront of our community, which I believe is the barbershop and beauty salons where information flows. And it's been very successful. And to see that individuals that were staunch Democrats and hated Republicans back in the day, you can imagine, come around and finally say, listen, we need to stop being so blindly dedicated to a one-party system that doesn't really work for us. I think we should put our eggs in not just one basket, but multiple baskets. I think anybody that's elected should have to work for our vote and not be so calmly and brashly, expecting it. So I think that, and I just didn't meet Trump. Trump was in the fabric of all culture in inner cities in the '80s and the '90s very heavily through our music. He was idolized as being one of the master hustlers. So he didn't get that racist stigma in my eyes, until recently when he decided to pursue the presidency. So I don't.
Well, really, it started with the Central Park Five. Respectfully, because I lived in New York at that time, and that was crack, right, in 1989.
Okay, that was someone's opinion.
No. I mean, and let me give you the frame for that because I want you to continue. 1989. This was after the Jackson campaign, and that was the first time that Blacks of different ethnicities came together. Because in New York, unlike Chicago and other cities, you have immigrant Blacks. So, and you know this, Roger, from being out east. And they did a survey of African Americans in New York. And out of the 26 groups, this is when I first moved up there in '88, Black Americans were like second to last, 25th out of the 26, because everybody else was from some island in the West Indies, blah, 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 blah. So, you had people coming together, and the word all over the streets when these boys were arrested was that they were not guilty. Because this, would say in the barbershop, the beauty shop, Black folks have a wire in the streets. And the word was, no, these boys were not guilty. They did not find any of their maleness, let's say, on this young woman. And so people were like, whoa. And in the Black community, it was a foregone conclusion. We said something has happened to these children. That having been said, it was in that context that the whole city was freaked out by this woman who'd been beaten half to death. She's fighting for her life for days and days and weeks. She's lost all this blood. They were quite graphic describing what happened to her. And then he said he took out full-page ads in all the major papers calling for the death penalty for these boys. And so I just, I think it's important for you, for people to know that. And that, because that was very, very painful, because you were like, oh my gosh, why would he do this? Right. That was hard. So just so that you know, but I think that it became amplified, say in 2016, but there was a reservoir, I would say, of bad feeling, Jeffrey, from 1989.
Okay.
Please. Oh, please continue. And
No, go ahead.
we do this back and forth on the show.
Oh
Just
yeah, without question. No, I understand. People have their certain opinions, but
Mhm.
as I just don't. I'm a Republican, so regardless of who's in office, I really appreciate President Trump's position or his effectiveness so far, and actually doing what exactly he said he's going to do.
Mhm.
But all this unveiling of this corruption that we all knew existed, but just didn't have any power to change. So I'm just curious to see how far the rabbit hole goes and
Mhm.
how much more disappointed the American people are going to be with this with a party that has been basically manipulating on all angles.
Well, let me ask you this: does Elon Musk, who is a product of apartheid South Africa, um, was never, well, no one's ever asked him to address that. And Peter Thiel, who's made complimentary comments about apartheid, about its efficiency. And I mean, it's a whole gaggle of them who are in the Silicon Valley tech space. Um, does he give you cause for concern or no?
Not at this point, but you got to watch everybody, you
Okay.
know. So everybody doesn't get a 100% pass until he starts to raise other concerns that worry me. But for
Hmm.
right now, his target is the enemy is my friend.
Hmm.
So right now, he's unraveling a whole bunch of stuff that everybody needs to know, and it doesn't have to be a partisan matter. Wasteful spending and corruption and racketeering, those are all criminal titles. So anybody that does that can be named that.
So what you want is just you want exposure on all of the corruption and just the mess.
Absolutely,
Okay.
100%.
Okay. Okay. And now I'm going to read some of these comments. I promise you as I get to you, but let me get around and talk to everybody here. Pastor, I need to hear from you, Pastor Reverend Dr. Roger Harris. Your thoughts.
Well, thank you again for the invite. Um, just the background, I'm a counselor. Uh, I work with men all my life. I work with boys from the East Coast, recently here to Chicago, and my background is meeting boys where they are in juvenile detention, meeting people they hurt. And so when you brought up the whole idea of black men loving Trump, I'm I'm with the thoughts of my brother how we approach things. I mean, um, there's issues. There's blood on both sides of the waters. I'm reading uh, Dr. Bozak from South Africa, black theologian, and he wrote this book about Pharaoh on both sides of the water. And so for me, the concern is a mindset of not just a theologian, but being a father figure, uncle. That when you say love, that's really broad. And when I look at that, I think about those men that raised me. There's a certain covering, and so when we think about all the issues that we're dealing with, I believe I think of my father fondly. He's still with us, but always worked hard, and he would always teach that no matter who's in front of you or who's the whoever that you have to work with and work for, that whole adage of respect and you know just just to be open um, to the possibilities. I think what it is, what right now is that we're so emotional, and so when you talk about emotionalism, just Pastor Hatch, the whole issue of Genesis, Esau and Jacob. I think we're at that point where um, the question to the Father, is there anything left for me? And as Black men in society, we always turn around and we've been disenfranchised. When slavery, bucked men and turned them out and tried to um, just use them as chattel. That the ripple effect, even now, as we see the industrial system of children being raised in juvenile detention centers and not just men, but men and girls. And so the issue is that before we can get to where we at, what we're called to be, that there's certain basic needs. And so if we're not addressing basic needs, then we can't get to the next level. And so as a social worker in me says, those issues of Maslow's theory, some people just need some eggs just to eat, and so if a Trump or whoever's going to give me some eggs to eat, some bread, just like the gangs, they provide for their homies. And
Well,
so
but hold on, you counsel people.
yeah.
This just came to my mind, and you and Dr. LaShawn Latrice, a community psychologist. Do you think that the fact that he has taken so many hits and he's been knocked on the ground and he keeps on getting up, do you think that resonates with some of the people who you talk to have taken hits in their lives? Do you think that they identify, Pastor?
In certain aspects, yes.
Okay.
In certain aspects, in terms of, and it's not just Black men. I think that's an aspect that's cross cultural, and it's not just us. As your father has taught, in terms of the movement, we have to keep our eyes open. And since I've been in Chicago, I'm reading more newspapers. I'm broadening my horizon in terms of information. And so even this past week, we see the ripple effect of what's happening here in the U.S. We see the buck back in other countries in terms of the brother said Jeffrey going. You look down that rabbit hole, you see that there's injustice on both sides. And so when there's an awakening, people looking anywhere they can to feel some type of wholeness. And so, as we deal with not just the physical nature but the spiritual nature of our community, then this fracture there's fractures, and so emotionally we're just fractured right now because we get so caught up in one thing, and when we don't get this thing that we expect. Again, this media that you're providing, independent voice, leads to us to begin to actually critical analyze and talk about where we are as individuals and a people. And so again, this is a really crucial time to begin to identify where we are personally. And
Sure.
yeah. So
Yeah. I mean, and to understand. I mean, I think that's, it's important for us to not blame and shame, but to really understand, Pastor Hatch, just where we are. I mean, that's why I've said, I think more people, Jeffrey, will tell me, because I'm not judging. Well, yeah, I voted for so and so. But now more and more young Black men have said to me, oh, Trump. Yeah, absolutely. He is, because he resonates with them on a profound level. Pastor Hatch?
Yeah, I work with a lot of young men in one of the poorest communities here in Chicago, here on the west side, and of course we had some levels of that conversation before the election, and we've got social workers and psychologists, community psychologists that can talk about the brokenness that's out here, but let me just tell you, we can explain it all kind of ways. I know what it feels like to live in a one-party state, Illinois. What it feels like try to go out on a limb and work the two-party system, knowing you're not going to get much, taking it for granted by the Democrats and ignored by the Republicans. And so, you know, I had a bad experience with that, with the last Republican governor, trying to give him a chance. Objectively, when it comes to Trump, this is an unmitigated disaster, no matter how you look at it. We're a 2/3 world people. So, you know, number one, when it comes to the federal, the federal budget, the poor are going to lose on this deal. This is all about making space for the rich tax cut that's coming down the pike. And so that's what the layoffs about. That's what shrinking the federal deficit is about. It's not about necessarily corruption and fraud. These are not these kind of moral actors that are in place. This is about looting this joint by the time this is over. But the unmitigated disaster for us as a people, when you look at the squeeze that's being put on South Africa for having the nerve enough to try to be sovereign, to try to act moral in the international sphere, especially when it came to the genocide in Gaza. They are being squeezed. And in many cases, almost all of these leaders without real power, you had the king of Jordan in, the president of Egypt canceled. This is white supremacy on steroids going global with the US military backing it. It's horrific and it's embarrassing. So I just think that,
But having said that,
yeah,
why then do you think that more and more black men, because his numbers are growing, and
we're
quite
not
frankly, popularity.
we're not informed.
Okay.
It's an opinion, but it's not an informed opinion.
Yeah.
It's not a sophisticated analysis. It's in some respects, it's about you've been mistreated by the man, and so have we. In some respects, is get those migrants out of here. We finally found somebody we could kick around and look down on. In some respects, it's about the absolute effectiveness of the disconnect in the black family and this sort of resentment of African-American women who have found ways, in spite of all of their obstacles, many of them, to still function in this system and try to hold families together and themselves together, sometime without the help that maybe we're just not able to provide. So we don't have the spiritual energy, the spiritual force to oppose what's happening to us now. And so the family is fractured. I mean, that is part of what, I can understand people, whatever opinions they had of Kamala Harris, that would have been better than this. And some of what she faced is this resentment that we have, that we see in certain levels here in terms of black women, and who is by far now emerging as one of the most educated parts of the demographic, the American demographic. So it's upsetting, to see how willy-nilly we're going into an authoritarian government, which is kind of bigger than black and whiteness, that binary. This is an existential threat. And so you have the newly minted Secretary of Defense over in Europe yesterday, and basically saying they got to leave Ukraine hanging, whatever that's all about, because we have to prepare for war with China. So this is beyond us having analysis that is unsophisticated and pretending as if it makes sense when it doesn't.
Before I pivot to Daryl Jones, I mean, there was a time when the Stokely Carmichaels, the Kwame Ture's, and people like that captured the black imagination. And these were black men who stood up and were forceful, Reverend and his big fro and Dr.
Yeah.
His more gravitas. More. Now it seems that many people, black men being the focus of this discussion, are looking for something else. Having said all of that,
Hmm. You
he,
mean before COINTELPRO was effective,
I'm
before
saying,
mass
I'm saying,
incarceration, before the
I,
crack epidemic?
yeah, but they're not. I don't know. Well, hold on. Let me pivot back to you, Jeffrey. I mean, you've heard because not that I'm making you the representative Republican here, but when you hear that, what's
You
it?
know what? I have to respect it. That's his educated opinion. But a lot of times, politics have to be on a layman level. That's our problem. All these issues that we've been having has these aren't just instant occurrences. Our communities have been deprived for years under a democratic stronghold, no matter how you look at it. And if somebody comes in and is finding corruption at the level that's being observed right now, and has objection to that, then that's disturbing. I want to
Oh,
see so if I go to my job on my business and I'm finding I'm auditing my books and I'm finding that all my employees are basically stealing nilly willy. That's going to upset me. Everybody should be upset because everybody's affected. So that's just my opinion, and I respect the brother's opinion. And I got bruised by Bruce Rauner too. So, so yeah. So I do understand. And again, this is why this is important to have educated and 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 talk about the issues so we can try to come to a conclusion, a group conclusion for the issues that we are facing. We're in the middle of it. And that migrant situation was just an additional slap in our faces. So we have to realize what position that we really are in and come in and have more conversations like this so we can educate and have some dialogue that can lead to something and not just an argument.
well, it's important because if you look at the white community, they're never out. They're Republican, they're Democrat, and that's why I don't get into this fight that they're having about Trump. I have had many friends who are television pundits, just as I am, and they were trying to top each other about all the nasty things they could say about him. I said that's not smart
No, it's not.
because number one, when white folks finish fighting, they hug it out. Mika and Joe went to Mar-a-Lago. They just finished making him Hitler. Remember that. So I'm like, stop that. That's not our fight. My fight is 40,000 HBCU students we lost in the Obama years. We got some ground to make up. I don't. My black owned banks, where are they? I mean, yo,
We're
we
in,
got
we're in a predicament, and we've been in one.
yeah, and and I'm gonna tell you, and I don't think the Democrats got us here, and the Republicans won't rescue us. We are. We will rescue us using the instrument at our disposal, and that's just my thought. But I want to hear from you men today, and the lady, the psychologist, who's going to analyze all of you nuts, so she can. So she can and that's why she sits and she's so quiet. Don't be fooled. Don't be fooled, Daryl, because this story jumped out at you. You're in the DMV. Why did it jump out at you?
Well, Santita, I think one of the reasons that it jumped out at me is because we had heard previously during the election cycle that there was an uptick in Black men that supported Trump. And when we started tracking that, the question became, is this accurate? Is it true? And then we started to classify it, right, to label it by saying, well, this is just misogyny, right? That they're not supporting Vice President Harris because she's a woman. That's why they're going to Trump. When this poll now comes out, it goes against the grain of that. It's saying it wasn't that it was against Vice President Harris, that there was something else that was going on that seems to have been attracting some of the black men. So one of the things that I immediately do is I go to the source of the poll, right? Because I don't know anything about the polling sources, Signal,
A signal.
polling, right? Yeah, I know nothing about them. So I said, let me do a little bit of research. Maybe this is where it's skewed, is where the number is coming from. And as it turns out, Signal, from my understanding, the research on it, is very accurate with regards to their polling history and their reputation. They're also seen as being left leaning to moderate in terms of their politics. So it gives a founding of accuracy to what it is that they're saying. I said, okay, so now if we're accepting that what they're saying is accurate, then the question becomes, what's going on within the community? And I think that one of the things that I see and that I believe may be happening is that what President Trump has done is he came out the gates, and I think Brother Coleman was hitting it right on the head. He was doing what he said he was going to do. He said he was going to go after immigrants and deportation, and that's what he has done. He has gone after immigrants and deportation. Many in the African American community, and I take this from some of our prior shows, Santita, in Chicago, are having problems with these immigrants that are there, the folks that are migrants that are being brought in, that are being given all these opportunities in the major cities, and there's a tension that exists. Why are you doing? This is our country. We were here. These are things that are given to folks that we should have the opportunity to have. So that taps right into that feeling of what the African American community was going through and what they're feeling with regards to the immigration side of it. When we get into talking about whether it's Gaza or Ukraine, again, the question is, we want money spent in our country. We want money spent on Americans. If you can close this out and get our money here so that we can get our fair share of the pie, that's what we want. And I think that's what he's tapping into. And interestingly, one of the other polls that I saw actually indicated as January came to an end, that President Trump's approval rating in the African American community was higher than it was in the white community. Think about that. Okay, higher than it was in the white community. So,
why do you think that is?
I think it's supported by much of what I've just laid out. I think that when it comes to immigration issues, I think African Americans tend to be more conservative on those issues. I think that when it comes to job issues and employment issues, that we want jobs, we want to work, we don't want it given to us, we want to work for it, but we want an honest broker on it. I think that when it comes to dealing with the FBI, the way that President Trump has had to deal with the FBI, that we don't trust them any more than President Trump trusts them. There's not a trust that's there. So I think that when we start looking at all of these pieces that are in place, it's not too surprising that there's a basis of support that would be there for the things that he's taken. Now, I'm not saying I'm part of that world. I'm just laying out the analysis. One of the bigger issues that's going to be there, though, is going to be with this whole DEI initiative. That's going to be a problem, and that's problematic. But I think that when you start weighing it all out, it's going to be a lot of the domestic issues that are there. It's going to be a lot of the economy issues that are there. It's going to be a lot of issues of how you deal with immigration. And those are the things that he's put forth. The big thing that we do know is that, he's a showman, right? He's television made, television ready. So he's certainly going to hit you with all the glamorous things, all the high spots to get you excited, to get you worked up. And you may not see the other things that are going on because he wants to shift your focus to something else that's bright and shiny that he has that's going on, which may be what was happening with all the raids and things like that. That was the shiny piece to take you away from these horrible folks that he's having put into the administration.
Well, everybody, I want to hear from you. What do you think is happening here? I mean, LaShawn, talk to me. What do you make of all of this?
Some of it is, hello, everyone. Some of it is just simply people turning people against each other. It's kind of a divide and conquer type thing. What I see in one respect is I did talk to a lot of people who said they were going to vote for Trump during the election, but it was simply based off of the things that was happening during the campaign that they did not like. They felt like, the vice president did not speak to certain issues, especially when it came to speaking about felons. I noticed that was a huge conversation. A lot of people who had been impacted by incarceration, they felt like they were left out of the conversation. They felt like their votes didn't matter. They weren't even considered. And then when you heard people discussing how they were supporting Kamala, it came out across as, you don't want to vote for a man who has 34 felonies. And, and everybody kept hearing that. And they're like, wait a minute, I'm a felon. What are they saying? We can't recover. We can't, be reintegrated. And so that hurt in a bad way. But also the misinformation too. There was a lot of misinformation that was going out. I heard people saying, I'm voting because I'm going to get me another PPP. People were saying all kind of stuff. But it is just the fact that we don't research certain things. When I first saw the changes that were being implemented, because it is laid out in Project 2025, but we remember the president vehemently denied that he had anything to do with that. But now everything is all of a sudden unfolding, and it's coming right to what it looks like is on black and white. You can see it. I am curious now to know what people believe now, how this is impacting them with the changes that are taking place, because I, for one, am very concerned about federal programs being cut. When I look at my mother-in-law in the hospital and possibly losing part of her Medicare coverage, or when I'm looking at one of my children who has received a full scholarship, some of those funds being taken back. We are hardworking people, but we use these funds for things that help us, and it helps our families grow and excel. And those things I take personally. So I'm curious to know what people who support Trump think about that, because the trauma on the other side, I see so many people who are in such a frenzy. I'm just kind of reminding them that God is still on the throne. But I mean, people are really like shaking in their boots right now with the changes that they're seeing being made. And it's enough to traumatize anyone. It's just, for me, I choose to look at the higher power. And so for me, I'm just going to continue to focus up. But everybody doesn't have that lens to be able to zero in on that. And I think people are severely impacted by the changes that are taking place, and especially a lot of the men now.
Jeffrey, you are a lifelong Republican.
Absolutely.
What is it about the party that has been attractive to you?
Well, after the untimely demise of former Mayor Harold Washington, my family made the decision for me. They were very disgruntled about how the system put us in trick bags, separated us, and they were absolutely, not just him, it was a lot of good people I can't even name right now. But that was the thing that was the straw that broke the camel's back for me and my family. But also, I've never been a fan of just having. Remember, it was only one phone company.
Ma Bell.
One phone company. And what happened after that was a monopoly, right?
Yes.
We have elected officials that were elected when I was in high school to this day in Cook County. And I can tell you one thing: I have never ever seen any dramatic change for the better in my community through our schools, our infrastructure, our economic development, all these platforms that everybody always uses. Public safety, transparency, economic development. Yeah, it's just disheartening, and it's more enlightening. I'm telling you, these numbers and these statistics are real. Just go on the streets, and a lot of people don't have layman explanations for their how they feel. They can break it down to its very last compound. I'm sure there are going to be individuals that are shocked and scared, because people do use fear. But I don't think that the president is going to cut off Medicaid. I do think that there are government bodies and entities that never benefited us at one time that are making money hand over fist. $50 million here, $125 million. This is gone unchecked for so long. And it's like right now somebody's trying to put a check on it. So I don't see what the problem is. You go to the doctor, you're going to get diagnosed. He gives you a checkup. He just don't start giving you pharmaceutical drugs without having known exactly what's happening to you. And this bleeding is atrocious on just a small level that we've seen right now. So to me, open the books, let the American people see where we're bleeding at, get the money back that we've been giving out obtusely, and get the country running back the way it's supposed to be operating. Everybody can get what they have coming, and especially the American people. I don't know any other countries that taxes their citizens and sends money to us.
So let me ask you this: do you want to go back or do you want to go forward? Because as I see
I
it,
don't want to never go back to nothing.
well, yeah, because I'm saying as I see it, it's never been fair.
Never.
And when I look at Democrats and Republicans, I say this on the show all the time. I see two birds flying the same plane, and they both stand for the oligarchs. That having been said, I think, voting is extremely important and being active in our political system. That's what we've got.
Yeah, but
You
we also
know,
have to be responsible because politics is not trickle up; it's trickle down.
no,
I
no,
mean,
but
it's trickle up, not trickle down. We send people to the hill. Our vote
yeah,
has to count. We can't. We can't be. Uh, ki- uh, we can't be continually blindly loyal to a system. Let's not call it a Democratic or Republican system. Our vote has to matter. Okay,
but I think we're in agreement here. I
yeah,
mean, that's what I'm saying. But we have to understand that voting is the end of the beginning, not the beginning of the end.
without question.
You
You got
know,
to
and
back it
many
up with something.
Well, I mean, you have to continue to call your elected official and you have to
Absolutely,
decide whether you voted for them or not. They represent you.
without question.
And
What happens? What happens when the? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, I'm just saying, I'm not so sure that we understand that whoever gets in. That's why I'm saying it's not time for us to fold up our tents because most Black people did not vote for Trump.
Right.
But the thing is, okay, he's there. Now we still have work to do. I'm still going to lobby him for what I need.
Exactly.
I mean, I don't go, oh, you know what he's going to do. No. Because I kept asking Biden for an executive order on voting rights, Daryl, and he refused to give it to us. Huh?
Yes.
And,
It's
and, and, and that backed up on, oh, look, his politics have always been atrocious. But there's that. I think we're all too caught up in labels instead of demanding that people deliver for us no matter who's there.
But that's the advantage of career politicians. They don't want everybody. I remember back in the day, it was most important to get voter registration drives off the ground.
Mm-hmm.
But I think they're comfortable enough with their electorate that they control that they don't want any new bright minds. They want to control the demographic that they have been comfortable controlling, so they can continue to be reelected. But it doesn't benefit our communities at all when
But
we do
Jeffrey,
that.
that's power, and that's the arrogance of power. People get in, and they're only looking to protect their turf.
That's it.
We've got to stop that. And I don't think it's. I mean, well, everybody else jump in. I mean, Pastor, what you're about to say, you sitting way back in that chair. I know you. I know you. You got something to say, Pastor Hatch.
Oh no, just listening. I wanted to say that the brother quoting the reason for the stats, the brother Daryl, it could add social issues to that as well as a
Right.
reason why Black folk are finding some affinity with some of the early things that Trump has done. I just wish it was. I just wish all the shiny stuff wasn't about the okie doke being played, which is that the treasury is going to be dumped into the hands of the oligarchs with the tax cuts, which is what it really is all about. And I think it's going to be a little worse because I don't think Trump is going to feel the political pressure. Either he doesn't have to worry about being reelected, whether he leaves office or not. It might be the calculation. And so you don't see sort of the natural a political bend toward public opinion in many respects because I don't think he feels that political pressure. But I think that at the end of the day, I think we're going to be the ones sort of behind the proverbial 8 ball in the Black community, because many of these programs, Head Start and all of that, are going to really gut programs in our community. I'm down here on the grassroots level, and we connect with a lot of families. We support a lot of families with our ministries and programming, and it's going to be tough in places like this when resources dry up. All of the bad stuff is going to go way up, and you're going to have almost, you're going to feel an incredible amount of pressures when people struggle to try to feed themselves for the scraps that come down to the bottom of the empire.
Well, what is the answer, everybody? Because see, I saw after November, Black women were very, very disappointed, Daryl, and very hurt because they saw how Kamala Harris had not been supported. They saw that. That she was asked to do the impossible and she made it probable, and good for her. That having been said, there were some things that she wouldn't move on that hurt her campaign, like Gaza, right? Like really speaking to her record with incarceration. And I said, I'd been saying that for a couple of years. I want her to get ahead of it. If she gets ahead of it, she has a chance to work that out, right? But you do have a body of Black people, but we're talking about Black men today, who have had it. And I don't know, Jeffrey, if people really understand all the blood on the floor. Walking out of the 84 and 88 conventions, we had absolutely had it. Because when I tell you about the disrespect that Reverend and Mrs. Jackson and our supporters had to personally absorb, it would have made you sick of politics forever. But Reverend kept saying, now we're actually in the door. And now we have another fight. We have another fight. And you have Black folks. Republicans are reaching for Black people now because Black folks started pushing. I remember that the fall of 1983, the cover of Time magazine, the first cover of Time, well, it wasn't the first time he'd been on the cover of Time magazine, but that cover story on Reverend was the new Black power. Period. They didn't say the new Democratic Black power. They didn't say the new Republican. They said the new Black power, getting us registered to vote. And I think that Dr. Latrice, it means that we have to continue to be active once we voted. I need you to be less Republican and more an advocate for the Black community, using whatever tools that the Republicans say use. We need some answers, Reverend Dr. Roger Harris. We need some answers because we see the pain out here. You know what it's like. I have someone grabbing my door every time or following me to the car when I'm at the grocery store. And folks are they're struggling out here and they don't have any answers and that they're not seeing any relief. Reverend Dr. Harris, I'm going to give everybody a minute so we can close out, but I promise you we're going to continue this conversation. And I want to thank you, Daryl, for bringing this to my attention. It's something we've been talking about, though. You know that for quite some time. And I'm not inclined to disparage our Black men. I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and he was making some wisecracks about the Arab American community. And, well, how do they like this? And I've seen a lot of the progressives and the liberals talking about the Arab American community. I said, wait. Rashida Tlaib, when you see her on the floor of the House of Representatives, Pastor Hatch, her grandmama lives in the West Bank. I know people who have lost all of their family over there. Are you serious right now? All you can do is look at them with contempt? Are you crazy? How do you do that? Pastor Hatch, it's like, what? It's like you can't do that to somebody. Because if it were my grandmama, no, I'd have a problem with you. You won't let me on the stage at the Democratic convention and speak. I'm the moderate voice. And you know what I'm going to say. Because you're not going to let me on the stage unless you have my speech in advantage and you put me up on those glass screens. They're called teleprompters, everybody. Reverend Dr. Harris, Black men are moving more, and the American public, quite frankly, his his numbers are rising with the American public because the American public want to see movement, y'all. They do.
Yep.
They do.
They're tired of the talk, that's for certain.
Okay. Well, Jeffrey, because I want to let you help to close us out. So you stay right there. Reverend Dr. Harris,
Well,
your closing thought?
my thought is that there needs to be a fire within. Dr. West, Cornel West, talk about a prophetic fire, and that fire is not just speaking in tongues, but I'm talking about fire within the belly of the people, that we rally around each other and begin to look each other in the eye and the heart and see who we are together. So again, when I see Pastor Hatch, knowing that he's working with boys, my experience with boys, then we need to pull together and give what is needed with the least that we have, in terms that the community is whole. And so it's going to be up to us to care for us. And when people see us caring for us, like other communities do, then we can continue to show a light within our community and move forward. And so I think that's really important now that we control the narrative of who we trust, who we believe in. I trust in God. I trust my brothers and my sisters, and whatever I can do to make their life, to help their life to be better, then that's my call, and that should be all our call.
Dr. LaShawn Latrice?
Just want to say that I think that once we recognize that we need to unite and become educated, continue to not be afraid to share information and also receive information, we will also understand that there is not just one political party, one or the other. We need to realize that we're working with a duopoly. And when you think about this from an oligarch standpoint, you'll understand that these people go across the aisles to work together. So it's usually us, the everyday people, that suffer. So I don't want to say I'm gravitating one way or the other. I would like to say that we need to attack this from every angle and realize that we have to go against all parties with the force, but we have to be a united front first.
Pastor Hatch?
Yeah, well, I think it's important for us to look at American politics. None of us elected the president. The majority of white people elect the president. And so, I don't think we should have any animus toward each other about wherever we are on the political spectrum. I think what we can do, one of the conversations we've been having, locally is sort of re-examining, Booker T. Washington's model of going hyper local and doing for self and building, community by building not just buildings, but building people. That's one of the things that faith communities do best. Deal with personal transformation, building community, and of course at some point, just making sure people can get their basic needs met. And when we offer that, then we're able to have some access to having conversations with people about what we ought to do next.
Everybody get over to the New Mount Pilgrim Missionary Baptist Church. Not only will you get some great preaching, you will get a history lesson. And we think, but no, seriously, it's such a beautiful, it's a cathedral. And it's a cathedral that is centered around the Black American struggle. And that means so much. Attorney Darrell Jones, chairman of the Transformative Justice Coalition, of course, on WOL 12 noon Eastern Standard Time every Tuesday. Your final thoughts?
Yeah, I certainly concur with what Reverend Hatch has said with regards to the hyper-localism and being localized in our response. That's what we're seeing when we look at many of the churches are given localized responses. Metropolitan Baptist Church in Washington, D.C., Metropolitan AME Church in Washington, AME Church in Washington, D.C., that sued the Proud Boys because of the desecration that they did of their property, and now own the naming rights, right? The trademark, the logo to the Proud Boys. That's a local action that's taken place. You know, the action that happened in Lincoln Heights in Ohio, where the blood, I think the bloodlines or whatever they're called, were there trying to terrorize that community, and the community stepped up and said no, you know, and came at them. When we look at, you know, in Ohio, where President Trump was talking about the Dominicans and all the eating the animals and the cats and the dogs, that community now has turned around and sued them, okay, taking them to court. So these are localized actions that are going on to national problems. So when Reverend Hash talks about the local actions, absolutely, local actions are a part of what we've got to do. The other part of what we've got to do is being certain that we elect officials that are going to be in Congress to hold our interests and to keep our interests and not be swayed from our interests by money or whatever it is that they receive once they are there. So that's also important that we've got to do that. We've got a big fight in front of us, Santita. This is the very beginning of at least, I would think, a 2 to 4 year struggle of what we're going to be dealing with, because we're going to be dealing with cuts in the Department of Education, cuts to HBCUs. We're going to be dealing with a lot of hits that are going to be really impacting the African American community. And we've got to be certain that we're putting ourselves in a position to have folks that are elected that are going to be able to get up front for us to try to soften some of those blows and perhaps throw a few blows back to protect us. That's what I think we need to be doing at this moment, Santita.
Jeffrey Coleman, now you're part of the family here. I'm so glad that you've been part of the show, but I want to give you some closing thoughts.
Next time, can I go first? Next time, can I go first? Because everybody's answering. Because anything I say is going to be like, oh, he just said it because I said that. So basically, everything they just said is what I would have said first. If you let me go first.
Brother Jeffrey.
So yeah, I agree. Our politics are local. And if we get down here, believe me, it'll get up there.
Now here I was trying to be gracious and let you close things out. And he's going like this. I'm like,
I'm unappreciative.
No.
And another thing, I don't ever want to be on another panel like this again. I went to Percy LaVon Julian, okay?
And I went to Whitney Young.
Oh man.
Public schools are in the house. Get on out of here. Percy LaVon Julian, you be quiet. I love it. Public schools are in the house right now. Thank you. Hey. But you know what? I tell you what, John Walsh says Musk isn't trying to save money for the people. He's doing it to give more money to himself, oligarchs. Okay, while gutting essential services. I do believe that, but I think that they are also uncovering some graft, but they're not looking at the Pentagon where so much of the graft is. And John Walsh, he said, which oligarchs do the Dems answer to, Santita? I can name Musk, the Kochs, Bezos for GOP. So who are the ones controlling the Dems to do their bidding? Taylor Swift, name one. Solomon, you responded, the Dems answer to Soros and Bill Gates, and along with the Hollywood elites. And the fact is, look, the same people who you saw buzzing around Trump at his inauguration would absolutely be buzzing around Kamala Harris. Bill Gates gave her tens of millions of dollars. These people don't do parties either. They do power. Mm-hmm. And that's really what I'm talking about here. Poor people do parties. Empowered people do power. And they're never out of it. They continue to register to vote. They continue to be active. At the height of the Reagan Revolution, Reverend Jesse Jackson, because he never stopped registering people to vote, they took back the U.S. Senate. It was considered to be an impossible feat in 1986 because Reagan was iconic in the middle of his own presidency. There's a whole lot that we can do, but you don't need to vote for someone just because they're with one party or another. You need to make them answerable to you.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that's one of the lessons that we're learning from all of this. There is an agenda that we have to have, that whoever is president has to answer to. If you don't believe that, look at APAC. They don't care who the president is. You're going to answer to them. I respect that. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I respect it
Phone died.
because that's the name of the game.
I'm sorry, my phone died.
No, 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 no. You were being disrespectful.
No, I did.
Hold on. Yeah. I'm
Somebody
letting
kill
everybody
me
know.
if I did that.
We still on the air. That's right. I'm
Okay.
letting them know that the Republican hung up on us, everybody. See how he did us? I love you, everybody. AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota, sending you all so much love. Hey, everybody.